Like any other period in history of film and television, people enjoyed being scared. Our fascination with the horror and the macabre extends even beyond the realm of electronic entertainment. Recalling the terrifying tales of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or even the horror lurking in the ancient myths. But for the children in the 90s, this fascination with the terroring and horrible man infested itself in one form, so submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. I call this tale, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Premiering in America on the children's programming network Nickelodeon in 1991, Are You Afraid of the Dark was a joint project between America and Canada. Most of the locations and the actors were Canadian, while its primary writing staff and the biggest viewer base remained in the US. Are You Afraid of the Dark in the main and episodic show where a group of diverse teens, known as the Midnight Society, would sneak into the woods and tell each other horror stories. Over the show's 7 season run, they dropped and added several storylines, but for those of us young enough to remember the original run of the show, we enjoy the company of Gary and the Bookish Magician, Gary's younger bratty brother, Betty Ann, the brunette perpetual dressed in sweaters, Kiki, the gruff tomboy, Frank, the punk clad in ripped denim and bandanas, Sam, a girl I can't, for the rest of my life in me, remember anything about, Kristen, the actress, and David, the introvert. Each one of the kids brought something new to the mix, and if you care to look at each of their individual stories, you could see themes creeping through, such as Gary's liking for supernatural items, or Betty's obsession with otherworldly beings and far-off realms. But no matter what the subject matter, it was pretty certain that you were in for an interesting, if not bone-chilling ride. One very distinguishing trait of Are You Afraid of the Dark was how dark the stories were allowing to get. A show like this would sadly never be produced in an overly PC age we find ourselves in today. The idea of death or the threat of screen child death would be a little too much for the censorers to handle. But such was the weekly fodder of the Midnight Society. This was a huge element to why this show did better than its cousin Goosebumps. While Goosebumps can be scary on an occasion, it can never have the stomach to descend to the tension that Are You Afraid of the Dark reached. If you need a comparison point, let's look at the opening themes. While Goosebumps is full of minor chord disturbing music, it spends its time on the whole floating around the sunlight, making a lot of odd changes to reality. Are You Afraid of the Dark, by contrast, was very subtler, with a lot of dark shots of the dolls and spinning fans with ominous sounds of distant laughing and creeping floorboards. Are You Afraid of the Dark's themes recalls to the times when we legitimately experienced fear, especially as children. Darkness, distant voices, creaking, unfamiliarity. The theme uses the elements to combine its slowly legitimate, terrifying theme song to force our minds to those fear places as much as it terrifies you before the show has even begun. Now, I'd like to draw your attention for a few episodes I feel are of particular note in the Piss of My Young Britches category. The first is The Tale of the Laughing in the Dark, a first season story told by Betty Ann. It's about a jerky kid who steals a clown nose in a funhouse only to have the terrifying supernatural clown come back looking for it. For anyone who has read or seen Stephen King's It, this feels very reminiscent, and some of the crazy stuff that happens to this poor kid seems to be taken straight from the book. Nonetheless, as a kid of maybe 3, this episode terrified itself permanently into my memory. Second, deserving of mention would be the tale of the full moon, told in season 2 by Kristen. This is the story of 2 amateur detectives who are forced to put their skills to rest when it turns out the new neighbor may just be a werewolf. This was an episode that showcased some of the better writing of the show. It constantly changed what you thought you knew about the episode until the twist happens, culminating in a pretty frightening chase scene. Lastly, and possible the most frightening of them all, The Tale of the Chameleons, another Betty Ann story from season 5. This is the story of a girl who learns the secret of the small lizard which hitched a ride home in her shopping bag. She and her best friend have to find a way to reverse the cold-blooded beast insidious spell before it's too late. Another episode with an excellent twist ending. This one had me walking away from it scared than any other show had put out. If you like mid-benders, this is one for you. This is not a complete list by far. There were tons of episodes that were just as terrifying as this, and I wholly recommend you watch every one that you can. You can find all the season's DVD box sets on Amazon. However, prices vary wildly from $20 to upwards of $100. As of yet, Nickelodeon has failed to release a complete box set of all 7 seasons. All in all, this is an inspirable piece of our past. This show managed to hold me in a fascinating terror until the year 2000 and is a legacy of terror the 90s should be wholly proud of. Maybe someday another show will come along hell-bent on frightening young ones out of their Batman underwears. But until then, I declare this meeting of Midnight Society closed. Are You Afraid of the Dark gets an 8.8 out of 10. This is Red Wolf signing out, and I'll see you next time. Peace.